Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this short video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, July the 14th, 2025. And yes, it is going to be a short video. I'm just going to look at what's happening astrologically over the course of a week. So it's a kind of a preview. And then I'm going to look at the I Ching. And my I Ching reading is going to have four sections: general, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. I'm not going to have any extra topic, just things didn't pan out today, and it's getting late, so I thought I'd just give you what I have. So here is the chart for the beginning of the week. And don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. And yeah, on the thumbnail, I've just got sort of yin and yang symbol. I mean, it's just a reminder that the I Ching is an important part of this video. It's not just about astrology. And so as far as this week is concerned, looking at the beginning of a week and what we're starting with, well, it's July the 14th, so we have to think about France, and I'm hoping that in my video for Monday I'll be having a look at France and Macron and other figures in French politics, and kind of try to think, where is France going? I mean, not that I know a great deal about France, but still, it's an important country, and we do have several charts for France. We've got obviously the fall of the Bastille, and we've also got the charts, or several possible charts, for the Fifth Republic. So that's one aspect of Monday. Now, another thing about this week, you'll notice the nodes and the moon. So the moon is starting to move towards a conjunction of the south node, and so that means we're moving back into Kala Sapa. So Kala Sapa is the time of the snake. It's a feature of Vedic astrology, so I might be being not entirely honest looking at Kala Sapa from a Western perspective. It is a Vedic technique. And what Kala Sapa means is, well, what it is the fact that you've got the moon on one side of the nodal axis. Sorry, let me rephrase that. You've got all of the planets on one side of the nodal axis, and that means for traditional planets. We don't count Pluto or Uranus or true black moon Lilith. And so when you've got all the traditional planets on one side of a nodal axis, you have Kala Sapa Yoga. And Kala Sapa Yoga, the time of the snake, is something that is not entirely common, but this summer, it is around. And so it's a time when things can go wrong, when things may not work as we expect. And it's possible that people who have Kala Sapa Yoga in their horoscope are especially affected when we have a Kala Sapa situation. So right now, we do not have Kala Sapa at the beginning of a week because the moon is on one side of the nodal axis, but it's crossing. And so the beginning of a week, as the moon moves towards a conjunction of the south node, we get Kala Sapa Yoga again. And that is something that we need to think about. And looking at the main events of a week, aside from Kala Sapa Yoga, we have on Thursday Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto. So Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto is potentially quite an interesting aspect. It's dramatic, or it can be dramatic. It is about power and how power is expressed. And some people might want to throw their power around. And there is this question of who is in control, and that's certainly something I will be looking at next week when I look at what's going on around Thursday the 17th. And then we've got Mercury. Mercury is slowing down, and by the middle of a week, Friday, by Friday the 18th, it's retrograde. So Mercury turns retrograde at about 15 Leo. So that in itself is an important degree because it's making a 135 degree aspect to the Aries point. So in other words, there's a Mercury Aries point field there with Mercury going stationary. And of course we have to say all the usual things about Mercury going retrograde, that over the next few weeks with Mercury retrograde, things might not turn out as we'd hoped. Think there might be delay, traffic jams, communication problems, all the usual stuff. And so that is an aspect that we really need to spend a lot of time thinking about. And additionally, on Friday, we've got Mercury sextile Venus. Now, that is actually quite a positive aspect. It's an aspect you can connect with art and talent and finding a way to make the most of one's talents. And it does take place at the same time as Mercury is going stationary retrograde. So maybe there's a silver lining to Mercury going retrograde. That at that point, 15, 16 Leo, when Mercury is retrograde, something might become clear. We might get absolute clarity about what we can do. Okay, we might not want to do it immediately or even be able to do it immediately, but maybe that may say something about the next few weeks. As July turns to August, we can start to fine-tune our fundamental abilities without necessarily having to do anything. So those are a few of the main things going on this week. And now I want to turn to the I Ching. So with the I Ching, you have to remember that this reading only applies to people watching the I Ching section of this video. If you don't watch that section, then this reading does not apply to you. So if you don't want this reading done, then you can stop watching this video. And this reading will have 4 sections. First, I'm going to look at things from a general perspective, then money, then career, and finally relationships. So I asked the question, what is the week starting on Monday, July the 14th, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 62, preponderance of the small. And this hexagram has a specific shape. It kind of looks rather like the letter H, and with the preponderance of the small, if you look at this hexagram, you've got a small weight in the middle, the 2 unbroken lines, and then you've got sort of long handles. I mean, that might be one way of looking at it. So you don't carry too much. You don't have to carry too much. You might feel that it's necessary, but you've got a lot to do. You've got a lot on your plate. But Mercury is going retrograde as well, so really try to trim things down. And you might think that you can do all sorts of things, but this is not necessarily the case. And so, if you have low ambitions, and you understand that you haven't got all the energy in the world, then it's possible that you can have a reasonable week. But there are some riders on that, and we do have to remember that the third line from the bottom moves, and so third lines in I Ching tend not to be very fortunate. And 62, preponderance of a small, this is no exception. And the third line gives a warning. It warns us about an attack from behind, a surprise attack, something we weren't expecting. And so this is not a time to be complacent. Now, what does a surprise attack mean? Okay, if you are wandering around some dangerous area, oblivious to what's going on, yeah, someone might come up behind you and smash you on the head. I mean, that's not going to happen, I don't think, but it's just how you should be viewing life. Don't take risks. Don't assume that people can be trustworthy. If you sign up to something, the surprise attack might be the small print, something you had agreed to, but you didn't know you'd agreed to it. So really do be very careful. And it does seem, one reason for preponderance of the small, the reason we have to take it slowly and not take on too much, is because we live in uncertain times, and we don't know how things are going to work out, and things could go wrong. And with this third line from the bottom moving, we does mean we move to a second hexagram, and we move to hexagram 16, which is contentment. That's one way of looking at it. The Wilhelm translation of I Ching calls it enthusiasm, and the Wilhelm translation is relatively enthusiastic about enthusiasm, but there is a problem with enthusiasm, and enthusiasm may have no basis. We can get enthusiastic about lots of things. We can buy a stock and think it's going to be enthusiastic about it going up 100 times and not consider the possibility that it might go to zero. I mean, that is enthusiasm. And enthusiasm on its own is probably quite dangerous. And contentment, contentment gives an impression of complacency. We might believe that things are okay for the moment. We are not sure whether they're going to stay okay. In fact, if we're honest, we know that they're not. We can see trouble brewing, but we can't see it. And so you might say, well, out of sight, out of mind. So that's fine. And that's not the right approach. And we need to be aware of what could go wrong, remembering the previous hexagram, preponderance of the small. Let's not forget also, when we looked at the astrology, we had Kalasarpa Yoga is starting. And Kalasarpa Yoga, the time of the snake, things are unexpected, and we indeed live in very uncertain times. So, generally speaking, it's a time to not take on too much, and just to be aware of how difficult things could be. That doesn't mean to say they are going to be difficult. And perhaps one message of this reading, in a general sense, is that it's a good idea. It's a good idea to have insurance. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying you should go out and buy insurance because you're worried about something, but you need to just ask yourself what could go wrong. So whatever you're doing, ask yourself what could go wrong. Protect yourself. Don't take unnecessary risks. Maybe if something has worked in the past, you were lucky. Maybe it won't work this time around. And we do just get a general feel that things are not necessarily going to get better, and we are living in unstable times. And if we're living in unstable times, then we have to act in a particular way. And so as far as money is concerned, it goes without saying that we should avoid spending too much money. Preponderance of the small. Do not take on too much. And be aware of your limitations. And do not trust anyone. I mean, that is especially important, not to trust anyone. And to consider ways in which you could be vulnerable. Generally speaking, I sort of suggested a possibility of walking around in a dangerous area. Certainly walking around in a dangerous area with a bag full of cash is not necessarily such a good idea. And so there are many ways of losing money and being taken advantage of. It's not just walking around with physical cash in your pocket. It might be someone suggests you do something, or you could sign an agreement, or you may make a financial commitment because you've trusted someone or trusted an institution, or you've been told that everything is fine. You may consider making a financial commitment on the basis of a particular situation, a particular set of assumptions. But to what extent can you take it for granted that those assumptions are actually going to continue? So if you think that if you think that having your cash in the bank is the safest place for it to be, well, that could well be the case. Of course, inflation can come along and can eat it away. So whatever you do with money, look at what could go wrong, and do not be complacent. And because of that third moving line, taking us to contentment, you might just feel that the financial situation is okay as it is. Nothing bad is happening immediately, so you can relax. Okay, that things aren't going to get any better, but or that things could get worse. You can see it coming, but you decide not to do anything because it's always more comfortable to just stay in the comfortable present, isn't it? I mean, it's difficult to stay in the present forever, but it might feel safe. But something is coming. Something could come along which undermines you financially, and if you can see it, then really that does indicate that you can actually do something about it. And so contentment is not actually the right attitude to have. You should not be complacent, and you should do what is necessary to protect yourself from any conceivable event. Okay, you can't protect yourself from everything, but I think at some level what could go wrong, and you're in denial, and maybe you need to just open your eyes and do what is necessary to protect yourself, at least on a financial nature, at least in a financial sense. And then we have career and business, and preponderance of the small is really suggesting that you should not take large steps. It's not a time to be doing anything especially momentous. You might be tempted to take on more than you can handle. Maybe there's outside pressure. If you're at work, maybe some people can't do things. They want you to do it. If you're running your own business, you might feel that any business is good business, and so you might as well take on the business and worry about how you're going to do it later. But I'm not convinced that is the right approach. And you do have to also consider how things can go wrong, because we got the third line from the bottom moving. And so with the third line from the bottom moving, well, there is a possibility that someone takes advantage of you or deceives you. And so make sure you're going to get paid for the work you're doing. Or if you have rivals, now might be the time where they try to undermine you. So it's not a time to be trusting anyone. I mean, not trust. Okay, some people do have to be trusted and can be trusted. But if you don't know someone and you're working with them, or they're a rival or a competitor, then they can do stuff, and what they can do can undermine you. And then we do move to a second hexagram, and we move to hexagram 16, which is contentment. And part of you might think that everything's going to be fine. In fact, the Wilhelm translation describes this as enthusiasm. Yeah, you might be enthusiastic about the future, but it's an enthusiasm which is somewhat fake. Deep down, it's unreal, and you can see that significant problems are on the horizon. Now, that doesn't mean that those problems are going to overwhelm you. They don't have to overwhelm you. You just have to be aware of them and see what's coming, and not just see them coming, but you actually have to do something about it. And so just be ever vigilant. And when you see a potential for disaster, not even disaster, potential for something unfortunate happening, then protect yourself. And I think that is the overall message of this hexagram. With your career and your business, it can be okay, but you just have to assume the worst. And if you assume the worst and you take the right measures to protect yourself, then I do think that things are going to be okay. And finally, there is relationships. And relationships should not be something that you get super enthusiastic about. I mean, you might, but it's not the right time to be doing that. You need to look at the people you're with and have modest ambitions. Do not expect too much of other people. Do not make demands, and don't try and take things too far in any relationship you're in. Or if another person or organization even is trying to push you to do something, to agree to something, then that's not a good idea. It's not a good time for commitment. Commitments can wait until later, because you need to understand what's happening now, and there is a lot of thinking to do. And the third line moves, and so the third line moving is, you could say, is one of the more difficult lines to have moving in the I Ching when we're talking about relationships, because the third line moving is about potentially betrayal. Someone you trusted lets you down, or they do something when you're not looking. And so don't assume that everyone is trustworthy or that everyone honors their word. Some people are really up to no good. And if you give them a chance, they will let you down and they will take advantage of you. And that applies more to relationships with people you don't know very well. And if we're talking about someone you're in a permanent relationship with, or you're married, well, then I assume you know what they can and can't do. So I'm not asking you to be suspicious of the people you really know and really love. But even then, it's a good idea to keep tabs on everyone and to look at what they're doing. It's possible that someone you care about does something with honest intent, but it still doesn't work out. So be interested. Be interested in what people are doing. If people are affecting, or if people's actions might affect you, ask questions, and just don't assume that everything is going to work out, as you might, because the second hexagram is that this moves to is hexagram number 16, which is contentment, and it is quite a complacent hexagram, believing that it's all going to be okay, that someone is going to honor their words, someone is not going to let you down. If you trust them, it'll be okay. But it's a good idea to trust people. There is that view, isn't it? If you take the view that you treat people nicely, they'll treat you nicely back. But I think from a realist perspective, I'm not convinced that is the right approach. And everyone has got their motivations, and certain people can let you down. And it's possible that there are some people in your life, and you know what they're capable of doing. You know that they can let you down. You're already seeing signs that they're about to let you down, but you look the other way. And then you get seriously disappointed. So it's not a time for wishful thinking. And I hate to say this, but really you should try to think the worst of people, and then be pleasantly surprised if you see something else. I'm not saying that people are going to show their worst traits, but it could happen. And if you're ready for the worst, you don't have to articulate that view. You can keep it to yourself and just make sure that you are protected, that you don't take risks, you don't leave things to chance. Then then I think that's the best way of dealing with things. So that's it with the I Ching. Sorry not to be more positive, but it's just 1 week. Next week is going to be different. And thank you for watching this very brief video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it, and if you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.